Hi everyone, welcome and thank you for joining us today. My name is Jane Hewitt and I'm the Capability Building Coordinator at Connecting Up and TechSoup New Zealand. Connecting Up and TechSoup New Zealand are part of the Info Exchange Group, a not-for-profit social enterprise that tackles the biggest social challenges through the smart and creative use of technology. And for those of you who haven't joined us before, we run an annual training calendar of workshops, webinars, boot camps and webcons. And you can check out our calendar by going to connectingup.org or TechSoup New Zealand. So welcome today to the webinar, Better Collaboration, Bigger Impact, How to Manage Work from Anywhere with Asana. And just before we begin, we'll start with a bit of housekeeping today. All the lines are muted, so if you have any technical issues, just please type them into the questions box on your GoToWebinar panel and I'll be able to assist. Likewise, if you have any questions throughout the webinar, type those into the panel, the questions box, and the presenters will be able to answer these at the Q&A at the end or throughout the webinar. If you're on a Wi-Fi connection and have multiple programs open, please can you shut any that you're not using, as it sometimes can interfere with the quality of the video or the audio. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and I'll be sending the slides and the recordings along to everybody at the end of today. And before we start, I'd also like to ask if everybody could take a couple of minutes at the end of the webinar to just answer our really short survey to help us out with future webinars. So I will now pass over to Michael from Asana, who will be able to get things started. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for that wonderful introduction. It's a pleasure to meet you all in this virtual world. I want to start things off by thanking you all for sharing your time with us. We know that time these days is a scarce resource, and this is especially the case within the nonprofit sector. I'm very excited to be joining this conversation with Sarah and Neil. I know there's going to be a tremendous sense of value gained by us all sharing this space together. And just as Jane noted, before I start, I want to note that we want to make sure that this webinar is as engaging as it is informative. So please, if there's any questions you have, let us know in the chat. We'll try to answer it there, and anything that comes up often, we'll save for the Q&A to really go in depth. So with that, let's dive right in. This is the agenda we have for the hour to come. We'll start off with an introduction to the 3 C's of collaboration to contextualize work management and how Asana fits in. Sarah is going to be sharing the story of Compassion Australia and how they were able to collaborate more effectively by eliminating information silos. We'll go into a really quick but I think really exciting demo for you to see how nonprofits are able to use Asana. And then Meenal is going to be showing us some best practices for getting started with Asana and how to navigate change. But with that said, let's start with the 3 C's. The 3 C's in its simplest form, which when we're talking about collaboration, can be broken down into communication, content, and coordination. Teams have invested heavily in technology solutions for the first 2 C's, communication and content. But as a result, interest in remote communication tools has exploded. But in many cases, teams have not invested in the 3rd C of collaboration, the coordination layer. Coordination answers the question of who is doing what by when. Without coordination, we spend more time in unnecessary meetings, reading more content, and drowning in more email, but not necessarily advancing our mission-critical work. As a result, most teams have resorted to makeshift solutions to coordinate their work. The most common are meetings, slides, and spreadsheets. These solutions don't scale because they're just a snapshot in time and not a shared and dynamic plan of accountability and action. Time invested in maintaining spreadsheets to coordinate teams, it keeps us busy and it maintains the status quo, but it doesn't empower you to scale your efforts, nor does it truly lead to more collaboration. Some have invested in traditional project management tools. but these can be difficult for teams to adopt beyond professional project managers because they force users to conform to how their software defines a project lifecycle. And while suited for management roundtables, that living connection to the underlying work being done is missing. But that's why we built Asana. Asana is one of the pioneers of a new category of software called work management. Work management is all about giving teams clarity of plan, process, and responsibility. It solves the problem of team coordination and answers the question, who is doing what by when? And because Asana integrates with your communication tools like Microsoft Teams and Slack, in addition to your content solutions like Google Drive and OneDrive, Asana adds a truly collaborative layer to the spaces where your work lives and is already taking place. Asana helps coordinate the elements of work: people, plans, projects, processes, information, and content, so teams can spend their time collaborating to solve problems. Projects are time-bounded initiatives such as fundraising campaigns, events, IT implementations. Processes are ongoing workflows such as design requests, volunteer training, and employee onboarding. By managing your team's work in one place, you get a single source of truth on project progress, a central hub for workflow processes, and a reduction in work about work so that you have more time to focus on the stuff that matters. I'm going to say something controversial, but true. The world has changed. So too has the nature of day-to-day work. Asana commissioned a follow-up study to a previously commissioned study on the anatomy of work in April of this year to evaluate the behaviors and attitudes of more than 5,000 full-time employees who are working home globally. We found that employees who use a work management platform feel more supported by their manager and believe they're more productive while working remotely, compared to employees that do not use a work management platform. Work management is a need that exists across the public and private sectors, and this is truer today than it ever was before. But you don't have to take my word for it. This is why we have our wonderful guest, Sarah, who is going to be presenting on the story of Compassion Australia and how they were able to improve collaboration by eliminating information silos.
Thank you so much, Michael, and the Asana team for inviting me to come and share today. Just to give you some background on who we are part of an international holistic child development organisation, and we work with children and their families who live in extreme poverty. The climate in Australia is that we have Australian sponsors supporting just over 120,000 compassion beneficiaries, and globally that's sitting at just over 2 million, and we work within 25 under-resourced countries. You know, the generosity of our supporters over this time has been incredible. When we launched our COVID appeal, as a lot of not-for-profits would have, we didn't know what to expect. We didn't know what the outcome would be, but due to the generosity of our supporters, we have seen over 2.8 million come in to continue to support compassion children and their families during this pandemic. And I just have to say that the generosity of our supporters has completely blown me away. Like many not-for-profits during this time, we have had to pivot, and I love that word pivot, and I know it's been used quite a lot over this season, but we've had to pivot to the way we respond on the field. And that includes changing some of our program activities, including offering food packages, hygiene kits, and even supporting families paying rent during this crisis. And so I just want to talk to you about why we chose Asana. So we had a few different reasons, but I want to highlight 3 to you today. The first one was that we did need to consolidate all the different tools we were using for project management into one tool. We also needed to increase the visibility of work across the organisation. And an example that I'm going to provide to you is how we use the portfolio feature, and also the ability to triage workflow specific to our IT department. So let me take you into more detail about each one. So we needed to consolidate project management. So as a not-for-profit, we were trying to really strengthen our project management arm. And so in order to do that, we realized that we were using all different things. Some of us, we were using Excel. Some of us was using different project management software tools. Some of us was using that trusty to-do list. And some of us were using Asana. And we realized that in order to bring consistency, to bring clarity, and to bring visibility, we actually needed to drill down to one tool. About mid last year, we conducted research and we gathered requirements from around the organisation to understand what is the tool that we actually need to help us manage our projects. And so we took our requirements and we looked at the market and we included Asana as part of that research. And then we compared. So we matched what was available to what we needed. And Asana really fit the bill for what we needed. Being a not-for-profit, and a lot of you might be able to relate to this, is that we have access to limited resources and to limited people. And so we constantly are striving to do project management well so that we can continue to see a greater impact in the 25 countries that we work in. The example on the screen in front of you is one of the templates that we've used. So Asana offer templates that you can customize. So we have project management templates that we've created, but we also have people that have used these templates to match their internal processes, and that's been working really well for us. And so this template that we've got on the screen, the reason we created this was because we wanted one place where people who led projects could come and find all the information. If you know project management, you know there's a lot involved in project management. There's a lot of different documents, there's a lot of different tools. And so we've used this template in Asana to actually put everything in the one place. And so if you have a look at the template there, you can see that we've got a section called Project Management Instructions. And we've actually listed out each step of how to set up your project. Within that task, we've also provided links to all the different documents that are available, just so that people don't have to search everywhere, but they can come to this one place for project management. One of the, a few of the benefits from using Asana. So we had been using Asana, but not for project management. So over the past 12 months or so, the benefits we've seen is that now all our projects are in Asana, which is fantastic. As I mentioned before, we now have access to templates that we can customize for our own benefit. If you look at the template on the screen as well, you can see that we've created customized fields, which is fantastic because then we can really build the templates to what we need. The other key thing that worked well when we rolled out Asana was having a dedicated person and team within the organisation that could organise the training, that could capture the feedback, and that could respond to questions, as well as provide that ongoing support and training. We also had the great support of Minau, our customer success manager. And so at the early stage of our rollout, she came in and actually provided training for a lot of people within our organisation. And that was really beneficial in the success of the implementation. The next thing I want to talk to you about is how we created visibility of the work we were doing. And so what we found is that we wanted to create visibility across cross-functional teams within Compassion Australia. The example I've got on screen is that we've been able to create teams for each department within the organisation. And depending on what work you're doing will be dependent on which teams you are involved in. But the benefit we've seen from using Asana is that we can actually share projects across different teams. We can also delegate tasks across different teams, and it's given people the ability to see where their work is up to. So can you imagine you've put in a request to another team, and often you sit there and go, I wonder how that's progressing, or I wonder where that work is up to. Well, now in Asana, people can actually see their request in real time, which is fantastic. The other example I mentioned before was the use of portfolio features. And so we use portfolios to group our work together. The example I have on screen is actually my team, and just an example of how we've grouped all the different work that we have. Michael called me out before and said, we haven't used the update status feature yet. And I'm like, okay, we need to. But I do know people in the organisation have been using that, which has been fantastic. An example of how we use portfolio feature recently was due to COVID. So when COVID hit, we had work happening everywhere. We had work happening in different teams. We had work happening at different levels. And we really needed to see what work was happening. So we created a portfolio for COVID, and we pulled all the different projects into that one portfolio. And it was fantastic because then we could see what work was happening. We could avoid duplication of work. We could see where time was being spent, and we could understand what work needed to be done. And so the portfolio feature for us really brought that visibility we needed during what's been a crazy and chaotic season. And the last example I wanted to show to you today was how our IT department triage their work. So as some of you will know, IT receive multiple requests every single day. And so in Compassion, we have a workflow coordinator that monitors all the requests that come through. And he uses Asana to be able to triage that work. So he can see the work that comes in, and then he can send it to the right team and the right department. And so the example that we've got here is specific to our software development team. So what the workflow coordinator can also do is see who has capacity. So we use a time tracking tool called EverHour, and the workflow coordinator can come into this workflow that's been set up. He can see, okay, this person has capacity, I'll give it to them. He can see this person is at max, I can't give it to them, so I'll give it to someone else. So it's great because he can really manage the work, he can manage roadblocks. If any of the team is struggling with work, they can put notes into each task, and then he can monitor that, and then he can also go back to the team if he needs more information. But it's such a great tool to have. And so just to go, so we've set this up in the Kanban style, and I love that you can flick between Kanban or lists in Asana. I think it's such a great tool to have. So the first column, we have new and requested. So that's for all new information, new requests that comes in. The analysis stage is really for the team to look at what is this work. So we know with software development, it can be quite complex or it can be quite involved. So they actually can take the time to go, how much time do we need to invest and who might we need to help us? It will then go to planning and approval, just so that we make sure we're putting our hands to the right work. And then it'll go to implementation. And that's when the team will start working on it. They'll time track. The workflow coordinator can manage the work. It'll then be released and rolled out, and then it'll be completed. So we've been using Asana for project management for over 12 months, but we also use it for our day-to-day work as well. We don't yet have everyone in the organisation using Asana, but that is our goal. And that will take some time, but we have already seen such great benefits in using a tool like Asana. So that's it from me today. Thank you so much, everyone, and thank you, Michael.
Thank you so much for sharing your story of success, Sarah. Really appreciate it. Can't wait to dig in to a little bit more detail in the Q&A portion of this presentation towards the end to learn more about the process. Next, we're going to be sharing a very slick demo by my colleague Alan, so that you can see how Asana can be used from headquarters to regional office and out in the field, all using the same application.
We're going to look at a fictional organization called Pinnacle.org, who is really focused on furthering educational opportunities around the world. And as we go through this story, we're going to hit a couple different personas, like Jamie, who's a director at Pinnacle. Let's go ahead and dive into Jamie's persona. Here we are inside of Asana. This is where she logs in every day, and she can see her upcoming tasks, her favorite projects and portfolios. We'll check out what that is in a moment, and her recent projects. For those who haven't seen Asana before, let me orient you to the interface. On the top right, she has her profile with settings, along with a very powerful search, so she can find any information she needs in Asana. on the left-hand side, she has her tasks, her inbox, as well as her favorite projects and portfolios. There are teams with all the projects associated with them. And let's go ahead and dive into her My Tasks. These are all the things that she's working on gathered into one place. And it's organized by date. It's got tags for projects that they belong to. And we can see that she can look at it also as a calendar. So this is where Jamie can really prioritize and plan out what she needs to get done. Let's go ahead and take a look at her inbox. Now, this is where she gets notifications for anything that she's a collaborator on. So if someone uploads a picture, if someone updates a task, or if a project gets updated, this is where all that information flows. This is how Jamie can keep great visibility across the entire organization and really stay up to date with what's going on. Let's click into one. And here we get a view of the task that generated that notification. We can see that a task has an assignee, a due date, as well as what project it belongs to. Over here, we have custom fields. These are metadata that describe the type of work. Down below, we have a description, of course, that gives information about what needs to be done, as well as the ability to create subtasks, the steps that help make this task come to life. At the bottom, we've got a great place for the whole team to have conversation about the work itself. Let's go ahead and dive into one of her key projects, the marketing fundraising campaign. This is where Jamie and her team can come together to figure out all the tasks that they need to do to help raise funds. And so we see there are sections for advertising, for email outreach, website updates, all the things that they need to be done in order to help move this campaign forward. And in each of these rows are essentially the tasks. We've got the assignees, the custom fields, all the information that one needs to understand the work that needs to be done. And the great thing about custom fields is that it's very easy to add in some extra ones. So here you can click and add a new one. You can turn on and off ones that have already been added. And to add a new custom field, you just give it a name. And there are several different types that you can choose from: text, numbers, and of course you have currency, percentages, all the information that you can possibly need to help describe the work that needs to be done. Now, this is the list view of a project. Fortunately for Jamie and her team, they can view this in many other ways, like this one, a board view. This is a Kanban style view where each card is a task. And you can move tasks from the left to the right along these sections. Now, another view is the calendar view. Similar to the inbox, this is where tasks are aligned on a calendar, really giving a sense of what's coming up. In the progress tab, you can see what tasks have been completed, what are incomplete, as well as a project status. You can see milestones and all the information about how the project is progressing along. Now, there's one more view called the timeline view. This is a really great view for Jamie's team. It gives a task in a timeline where you can see dependencies. And that's what this line is here. That shows what tasks are dependent on previous ones being completed. And Asana is smart. As you move things along, as things will change in a project, it'll automatically shift the tasks downstream to keep things up to date for you. Let's explore this task over here. So this is for creating a new landing page for pinnacle.org. And Nolan's working on this and has a number of subtasks that he's working on. So what we can do is actually help him out by attaching some files. And that can be done at the top right here. You see we can attach from your computer as well as integrations with many content sources like Dropbox, Google Drive, and so forth. Let's go ahead and select this image of these campaign thermometers that he can use on the landing page. This is going to be really helpful for the campaign. And so with that, the image is now uploaded and it appears in the conversation down below. And all the folks collaborating here can give it a like, respond to it with some comments saying, hey, here's some image that you can use, and they can do a lot more. If you click into the image, you can see that, hey, there's something that we might want to change. What we can do is click and assign a subtask to it directly using proofing. Here we want to see, can we update this text to say pinnacle.org? And as you can see, a subtask is created with that number 1, and it stays at that specific spot on the image. Awesome. So that's one of the key projects that Jamie and her team uses at pinnacle.org. Let me show you one more, and that's this one called Community Support Requests. This is the project that Jamie and her team uses to manage all the requests that come from the community. So folks outside of the organization can add in ideas and requests directly for her team to address. This is viewed in the Kanban style board view, and as you can see, the task can be moved from left to right. And typically these columns are set up as stages. And so as a request comes in, you can move it to in progress, to prioritized, and so forth. How do tasks get created? Well, this project can be shared with team members and other folks throughout Pinnacle.org. Another way is to use forms. This is our clicks, not code way to create a web form that can be filled out and will automatically create a task right into that project. And as you can see here, we've set this up to bring in a lot of information, description, what sort of help is needed. And the great thing is that you can add in any question type that you want. Paragraphs, numbers, attachments, and even the custom fields are available to you in forms. And with a simple click, you can add them to it, provide a description, and then you can reorganize the form as you like. Once the form is ready, you can then put this anywhere. You can put it onto a website, into an email signature, you can send it over to someone. Let's take a quick look at what it looks like when someone fills out the form. Here we're on a community member's phone, and his name is Henry Carson, and he can add in the name of his request. He's looking for volunteers to help out with remote education training and can provide details of what they're looking for. Now the form makes it easier for him. He can add in what support's needed, what date it's needed, if he's already receiving some aid, and then he can provide more information. How many people is it affecting? What's the location, the city? This is all information that's going to help Jamie's team better prioritize and move things through. And with a single click, the form is submitted. And if we head back over to Asana, we'll see that the task is being created right into the new request column. All the information is there for Pinnacle.org and Jamie's team to get to work on it. Great. Now, all these projects are wonderful and help Jamie's team out all along, but I'd like to show you where she helps collect and manage them all together. And that's here in a portfolio. In this case, their objective is to help communities around the world with education. And there's a number of projects that help feed into that. The marketing fundraising campaign, outreach campaign, the Pinnacle's event tour. Each of these help Jamie and the rest of the Pinnacle.org team move these missions forward. And so here you can see the status of each project, the task progress, what dates they're in the works, and so forth. Well, let's go ahead and fast forward and see a moment which actually needs Jamie and the rest of the team to jump into action. And that takes us over to another environment. Here in Outlook, information can come to Jamie in a number of places, through phone calls, through just chatting with someone. And in this case, she gets an email from her friend, Fred, who's basically said that, hey, I've stumbled across a great opportunity for the organization. Perhaps you might want to take a look at this new grant. And a very common problem with email, and something that Jamie and the team runs into, is that key information and actions that are in emails can easily get lost inside of a thread. And so in order to preserve it, Asana and integrations help her make sure that that work keeps moving forward. Here we can see an Asana integration right inside of Outlook. She can set a due date, select what project inside of Asana to add to, and we can select that marketing fundraising campaign. We can provide a little bit of a description and create a task right here from Outlook. There are also other great integrations with communication tools like Gmail, Slack, Microsoft Teams. This really helps Jamie and the whole of Pinnacle.org make sure that work is moving forward wherever they may happen. Let's click into to view the task, and we can see that it's brought in the information from Outlook. Here's that email from Fred. And now in this task, Jamie can start to get to work on this. She can assign a priority level, where this email, this information came from, and it was an email, and she can start assigning out subtasks to make sure that this grant gets followed up on. So to review it, she can assign that to herself, and she can also draft a grant proposal. And here's where she can start to involve even folks outside of Pinnacle.org, contractors, for example. And so by assigning it here, we can see that a contractor has been assigned, and we can even click into that task if we want to. And here's where the contractor and guests outside the organization can collaborate together on the work. Now that last task is to log this to Salesforce. Asana integrates really well with Salesforce as well. Let's take a look at what that looks like. Here we are inside of Salesforce. You can see this grant opportunity is created right here. It has a number of stages to it, as well as details down below. The grant amount and what kind of information is relevant for this grant. Now, in order to make sure that this opportunity is well connected with the folks who can help work on it, you can see we have an Asana integration. Here, you can create tasks directly from Salesforce connected to projects. In this case, let's go ahead and create a task. We'd like some help to make sure that our grant proposal really shines. So let's get some creative assistance, providing some information about what we're looking for here. To make sure that the folks who are helping us out have all the information that they need, we can attach an attachment with information about this grant. And now we can assign this to the correct Asana project, such as requests for creative production. This is going to put this task into a project that the creative team uses to prioritize and assign out work. So someone on Jamie's team who operates inside of Salesforce can use this integration to keep up to date with the creative team right through that integration. Fast forward in time, head over into this task, and let's attach the creative asset that's been requested. We can go ahead and upload this from our computer by uploading a PDF. And we see that it attaches it here into the task. Now, we need to get approval for this from Jamie. And what we can do is in the top right, we can set this task as an approval. Or we can get an approval on the attachment itself by just clicking it and requesting approval. With that, a subtask is created, and we can assign this over to Jamie. Let's go ahead and do that and provide a date that we need it by. And we can take a look at what Jamie sees. Here she is in her inbox. Again, the place she gets all those notifications. And we see at the very top, hey, here's that image he's been working on. And what you can do is right here, she can approve this. Now, approvals allow her to approve it, request changes, or even reject it. But this looks great, so she can go ahead and move forward. Now, the great thing about Asana and approvals is that she can not only do this at her desktop, but she can also do this on mobile, at her iPad. This thing a good approval. She can even do this on her iPhone. You see the same information, the inbox, the attachments, and approve from here as well. Awesome. With this grant proposal approved, let's go ahead and see how we move forward with Asana and Salesforce. If we move the opportunity to the next stage, we're actually going to see something happen in the lower left. An Asana project is automatically created. And this is not from Magic or Demo Magic. This is actually an automation between Asana's API and Salesforce's API. And if we click into that, we'll see that a project is automatically created when the opportunity hits a particular stage. This is an example of one of the many types of automations that you can create inside of Salesforce. And here, a project is created with assignees, due dates, custom fields already set so that the team can get to work faster. Well, let's go ahead and fast forward in time and assume that this opportunity is awarded, which is great news. Now, Jamie and the rest of the team can get to action and help out the communities with educational opportunities. How does Jamie enact this with all of her regional program leads? Well, here we are in a project for a weekly meeting with the regional program leads. One of the tasks that Jamie has set up to help inform everyone of this new program. Here, she can lay out information about it, but in particular, let's focus on the subtask. Here, she's asking all the program leads to create their own project from a template that she set up. She's providing all the information from instructions, the grant resources, and so forth. And in order to assign this out to all her leads, well, she can save a lot of time with Asana by assigning this out to a team, like the regional team leads. Rather than assigning this to each person individually, Asana can do the hard work for Jamie. And you can see that it's assigning this out to all the folks around the world. Let's go ahead and focus on one of them, Michelle. She's the regional program lead in South America. And we saw that one of the tasks was assigned to her. So when she logs into Asana, she arrives at her inbox and sees that task that Jamie created for her. All the information about the grant, how she can enact this with her programs in the area. And what she can do is click right into that task and see the project that Jamie and the team has laid out. This makes it very easy and very quick for her to get things going. And she can use this template and create her own project. Here she will rename it to our team's regional program, set the team, and here she can also set the start and end date. This is where Asana's automation comes into play. Because the template has a number of dates inside of its template, what Asana will do is look at that start and end date and shift all the dates automatically for her. So she doesn't need to worry about that. All the custom fields get put in. And with that, the project has been spun up and she can favorite it and add it to her left-hand side. Now, just like Jamie had portfolios to help manage their objectives, Michelle has her own. This one here called Regional Activities. It's a portfolio, a collection of projects that she uses to track all the key programs in her area that are moving their objective forward. With funding from this new grant, she can add this new project by just clicking above and adding in our team's regional program engagement. And I'd like to introduce you to the workload view inside of portfolios. Here we can see everyone on her team from Carly all the way down to Veronica, And on the right-hand side, we have a graph of all the tasks they're working on over time. And we can see it split up by the projects that they're involved with. Now, the number of tasks is a great measurement, but oftentimes some tasks are harder than others. And so if we switch this over from task count to estimated hours, we see, there's a red spot for Carly Coat. By expanding the view, we see, here's the culprit. We've got a task here that might need a little bit more time. So we can extend it to have more time and move it out. That way everything is more evened out and no one's going to suffer from burnout. This is the great thing that Workload can provide to Michelle's team. The rest of the Pinnacle.org team can collaborate to manage their processes, to collaborate with folks externally, even to apply for grants and execute them down to the volunteer on the ground, working to move these programs forward. With these programs looking great, Jamie can go ahead and mark off this milestone task of launching this fundraising campaign. And we've got a great celebration, and the whole team can keep the mission moving forward together. I hope you learned from this demonstration, not only about how Asana works, but also how nonprofit organizations are using this to move their missions forward. Thanks so much, and back to you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Alan. Appreciate that. With that, it is my pleasure and honor to introduce Meenal Sim, who will give us a little bit of an insight into how to get started with Asana with best practices in mind for navigating this change. Meenal, off to you.
Thanks, Michael. And I know that was a lot of information. For any of you that was following along on that big demo, don't freak out. My role as a CSM is really to help clients get onboarded in the most efficient, easy way possible, as Sarah mentioned. So let's start big picture. Why was Asana created? Really, what you can see on the screen is connecting end tasks, so everything that we're talking about from daily to-do lists, all the way through to the mission and the objective of the organization. As a not-for-profit, you guys have incredible missions that you want to achieve, but I think Asana helps provide that pyramid of clarity to understand how those tasks links into those missions. So the next slide that I wanted to talk about was really digging into the Asana hierarchy. Why I wanted to talk about that is because this is how our data model is built in the back end. So you can see on the screen that you've got the organization that sits at the top. Underneath that, there's a whole bunch of different teams. And then within each team, there's these different discrete bodies of work, which are called projects. Now, projects can be processes, as Sarah showed us on the screen. They can be actual projects, or they can be programs of work. Each of these are made up of tasks, subtasks, and comments. And looking at what kind of projects you can put into Asana, I really like to bucket this into 3 different examples. The first one being deadline driven. So this is anything that has a start date and an end date. So you can see at the bottom, we put some examples that hopefully will relate to you guys on the call. So fundraising campaigns, conferences, volunteer onboarding, anything that has an actual deadline. Every single task has a due date leading into the last possible task in that project. Now, an ongoing process is slightly different, where the actual project doesn't have a due date, but each individual card or task would have a specific due date. A really good example, I think, that we saw on the screen previously was requests. Board meeting minutes is another one, approvals. And then lastly, you've got planning and reference. So Asana can also be used for policies, for media calendars, for brainstorming. I think that's a really useful one at the moment with everyone kind of in this remote work environment where you're not able to be in a room and whiteboard ideas. You can actually create an Asana board and have everyone put their ideas on there. Now, a little bit about me. With the not-for-profit world, for me, it's actually been beyond just Asana. And so for me personally, I think it's the next slide, please, Michael. And so this is 2 examples of not-for-profits that we've helped. Me personally, I think both of these in the US, but here in Australia, we've worked with YMCA, SANE, Compassion, obviously, but a whole bunch of different not-for-profits. And I personally think that not-for-profits are probably hit harder than most industries at the moment with COVID-19. For me personally, I've worked very closely with Vision Rescue and a couple of other big not-for-profits. But I think when I think about not-for-profits, particularly when it comes to change management and process, I often think about not-for-profits very similarly to other organizations. I think the biggest things that you're looking for is clarity on who's doing what, transparency on different roadblocks that come up, understanding the project status of different initiatives that you're doing, and overall streamlining your processes. Those things are very common between for-profit and not-for-profits. I think what makes it really different though is often you're dealing with budget constraints, you're dealing with volunteers, and just a whole bunch of other variables in there that is kind of hard to navigate. But I think what I would say with not-for-profits taking on a tool like Asana to be able to streamline this process, this similar approach I would definitely still be taking, as I would to any large organization, but translating each of the different workflows into smaller formats that can be done with volunteers and kind of part-time workers and that kind of thing. So for example, a reoccurring process we can turn into a template to start to make coordinated efforts more efficient. Sorry, next slide. Perfect. So one of the first things that we often hear when clients come to us, we like the way things are done now, why do we need to change? We've tried something like this before and it didn't work. All of these things are really, really common. And I think one of the things that I would say is, please don't think that you're alone in this, because this is pretty common across the board, not just in the not-for-profit world, but also in large organizations. So what we have on the screen is the Asana way of change. And after this session, we've actually got a whole bunch of links that we want to share with you. And this Asana way of change, I think, can be implemented in any organization, whether big or small. And we've got lots of strategies that we want to share with you. As you can see in this different cycle, really understanding why you're moving to another system, or why you're moving to a system that is kind of streamlining everything together. Having a little bit of a stock of where are you at now and where do you want to go. And then starting to work through the different workflows that you want to do. One of my favorite ones is number 4, celebrate your wins. I think with any organization, definitely celebrate when things are going well. With anybody coming on board, whether it's a volunteer, a part-time person, or a full-time employee, I think this is something that really will drive that success. And then lastly, get set up for future success, so things like templates, and always measure and expand your use. What I mean by that one in particular is actually track what's working well and what's not working well. I love that Sarah said pivot right at the beginning. It's probably my favorite word of the season. Every organization is pivoting. Every organization has to think slightly different about what they're doing and how they're going to approach it. So something that I wanted to talk about in particular in the last couple of moments that we have is conventions. And so convention is, if anyone knows me, is probably one of my favorite words. The reason being is understanding which tool you're going to use for what is going to save you so much time. What you can see on the screen here is just a snapshot of what we send out to clients when I'm working very closely with them. So you can see here, Asana is used for internal work. Slack, which is a instant communication message, is used for time-sensitive communication. Google Docs for co-creation, and then email only for external communication. Understanding this and having clarity on this will really start to streamline that process. Now, best practices, I tried to solidify this, but there's so many best practices I can talk about. So feel free to take a screenshot as well. As we're going through this, I know that we're going to have a follow-up email as well, but my key kind of top tips that I would mention is invite people to projects, not just a team. Understand what the work that they're doing ties into what you want them to do in Asana. Not just a big picture, just invite them to Asana and expect them to know what's happening. We have so many trainings, we have so many online resources to be able to educate you guys. So I definitely would say invite them to a specific project in relation to their work. The other one that I really wanted to highlight was you can even manage your personal to-do list in My Tasks and keep these private. So for those of you that are using Asana as at your organization or thinking about it, you can definitely use it for the work that you're doing, but you can also encourage people to use it for their personal task management and prioritizing that information. And then the last one that I really wanted to kind of highlight before we move into what not to do is what's in it for them. At the end of the day, no matter who you're working with, whether it's a not-for-profit, whether it's a for-profit, people want to understand what's in it for them. how is this tool going to help them save time, save headaches on understanding where information's at, but also give them time back in their days so that they can actually enjoy it for everything else that they want to do in life. So a couple of key top tips there, and I've already touched on conventions and celebrate. So we'll move on to what not to do. And this is something that I would definitely say is don't try to change everything overnight. Change management is something that takes a lot of time. And I think trying to tackle all your processes overnight is probably not going to end well. So start with one process, start with one workflow, often something that's broken that a lot of people have eyes on, and start there. The other thing that I'd probably say is often with, I guess, more traditional project management, there's a project manager and that person's a task completer and they tick off all the tasks, they set everything up. Asana is a collaboration tool. And so I'd strongly encourage probably avoid that task completion role and really have everybody on the platform and ensure that everyone feels comfortable to assign tasks to one another. That might not be a cultural thing, so it might take a little bit of time to get there, but definitely something that I would talk about with our customers. And again, feel free to take a screenshot of all the other ones that I've got on the screen. And I wanted to just finish off this session with lots of key links. So I can see that Jane's shared this in the chat box, or the links are in the chat box as well. But feel free to take a screenshot of what's on the screen. This week, we're actually running a whole bunch of webinars on different styles, like so basic project management in Asana, advanced features. And so the first link that, the third one along, webinars and workshops, events.asana.sydney. We're actually running 4 different workshops starting tomorrow. So definitely would say if you can attend any of those, it would be awesome to have you there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Meenal. Really appreciate it. So where does that leave us? Asana, we know that nonprofits are expected to do more with less, and we want to do what we can to make Asana more accessible. And we've done this through 2 pillars of our program: the technology portion, where we provide the ability to gain 50% off an annual premium or business tier plan for 1 year. To do so, just go to asana.com/nonprofit. Select the country that you're registered in. So if you're registered in Australia or New Zealand, select that and click Learn More, and you'll be automatically directed to Connecting Up's website, where you'll apply there. But we also know that change is hard, and a fundamental component to success is being able to engage with folks who can show you along the way. So we also have the Asana Advisor Program that allows any nonprofit that has signed up for a 50% discount with the Asana for Nonprofits program has the ability to request a free 1-hour individualized consultation with an Asana employee like myself, or Meenal, who can hop onto a call to make sure that you're set up for success. And with that, we have the next 10 minutes available for Q&A. And I kind of want to start things off, and I'm going to start things off by asking Sarah, what did some of your processes look like before Asana? Because I'd love to learn a little bit about what it was that pushed you to select Asana. So I'm actually going to go in and stop sharing so we can see faces. How's that?
That's a great question, Michael. For our processes, they were very specific to the team, and so there wasn't much room for collaboration between the different teams within our organisation. And so what Asana has done is, rather than wait till, say, for example, a task is completed and then pass it on to the next team, we can now include different teams within the one process, if that makes sense. So what it means is that we've reduced the amount of time we need to spend on completing a task because we can bring people in quicker.
Was there an aha moment where it just clicked and the benefit of using Asana versus any other tool happened? Like what was that like?
For me personally, the aha moment was when we had all our projects in Asana and I could actually see the work that was happening. And so for me, I actually have a portfolio for all our projects. So although the different projects are within different teams, I have a portfolio so I can see the work. So for me, being able to see a project is on track, or being able to see a project is behind, or for me, that's great, because that means that we can attend to roadblocks quicker, and we can be more aware of the roadblocks as well. So for me, I just love visibility. It's been wonderful.
I love that. And so was there a single moment where that status quo was untenable and moving to Asana? And at what point did you see a real pickup in adoption of Asana? Because as we mentioned, change is hard, and we know that Mino was able to help you out, but curious what that adoption piece was like for you.
So prior to middle of last year, we did have 1 or 2 teams already using Asana, but that was more for just their own work. So when we decided to roll out Asana to the rest of the organization, our first step was to roll out Asana for project management. But because people knew there was such a need to work better together, actually other people started jumping on Asana as well. So we then had requests to be trained to use Asana for even just BAU work. And so what happened was we started in July implementing Asana, and it was almost straight from July that people started saying, please train me in how to use Asana. It was great.
I love that. Organic adoption is the dream state, right? But for those organizations that need a little bit more help, Mino, what would be some of your recommendations for teams that maybe don't have it as easy as Sarah, where folks were excited and asking how to learn? What are some pointers that you could provide the community about how to get started?
That's a really good question, Michael. And I can see Clifton, there's a question that's come through in the chat box, very similar. Change is hard, right? Adoption is not going to be easy for every company. I've worked with organizations that I've spent a lot of time. But what I would say is a couple of those things, the fundamental things that I mentioned before, what's in it for the end user? Ultimately, what does management want? So almost looking at it at 2 levels. I think definitely providing the training, providing the resources, I think those ones would definitely be there. But I think the harder one that you kind of have touched on is if it's not easy for the organization, there might be a fundamental reason why. It might not be, the organization might not be structured in a way that it's causing silos. I've definitely worked with an organization that they had to look at their structures and look at their reporting lines of who reports to who and what management needed to see, and actually explaining that back to the people on the team. The other thing that I would probably say, and back to kind of Clifton's question around, you know, have you come across or experienced similar issues? If so, how have you overcome the obstacle of adoption, even though you've provided all those things? I think the other thing that I'd also be saying is senior management, if you do want to drive that, sometimes you do need to mandate it. I know that's probably not something you want to hear, or it's probably not the nicest thing to hear, but if this is what the organization is investing their time, but also their money, I would also think about how you're going to mandate this as a tool to be used as an organization.
Those are great points. And actually, there's another question that follows up really nicely. Not everyone is a project manager per se, even if all of us work on our own projects as an individual contributor, or whether we manage those projects or we report on those projects up. Both Sarah and Mino, what can you say about that traditional project manage role, and how, like, is that a myth? Are we all project managers, or do you see someone emerge as an owner of that?
That's a great
question, Sarah.
So we have both. So we have quite a number of what we call project leads. So we have trained up people within their own departments to lead out projects, but I think Asana can really do both. So yes, we do have projects in Asana, but we also have trained and empowered teams to utilize Asana. One thing I will add is that we are planning to go down a path of having Asana SMEs. So like Asana champions within the different teams. And I think that also helps with adoption too. So our CEO is now a big fan of Asana. And what we're seeing is because she's on board, now that's trickling down throughout the different levels of management. So really empowering maybe one person per team to champion Asana makes a huge difference.
Sure. And I think what I would add to that, the project management is interesting because I think I studied it when I was at uni, but a lot of people didn't. And so the fundamentals of understanding how to structure a project, I think to Sarah's point, you can definitely put processes in Asana. They don't have to be set projects. But I do think having a little bit of understanding of basic sort of project management, you know, you have a deadline, you've got people that are involved in different areas, does actually really help. So I've seen organizations go off and kind of do additional project management, which ends up helping streamline the rest of the organization in what they're doing as well. But I don't think you necessarily need to have lots of project managers. A good example is in marketing, campaign managers. What they do on a day-to-day basis is very much around coordination, making sure things need to get done on time. That essentially is skill sets of project management. And so kind of thinking outside of the box, other than I just need a PMO team or I just need a project management team, there's probably those skill sets in other teams that you may or may not already be thinking about.
Those are both great points. Meenal, you don't just help nonprofits for fun as part of your job, although you also volunteer in addition to your job as a customer success manager. But you've spent a lot of time in the not-for-profit sector yourself. And I'm curious, being in both of these roles, is there anything that you can impart as maybe a last pearl of wisdom about what not to do or be mindful of for nonprofits that are eager to embrace change and dive into, you know, the process of digital transformation in your experience?
Yeah, that's a hard question. It's a hard question because I think there's so many things I can talk about here. I think the number one thing that I always remembered, even when I was working at a not-for-profit, but also working with not-for-profits, is understanding your why. I think not-for-profits harness this. You guys are doing incredible things and changing the world in different ways. And understanding that why and creating that vision, but communicating that will always drive really effective positive change. And why I say that is people join not-for-profits not necessarily because of anything else other than that they actually believe in the cause. And so what I would actually be saying is for us to get to A, B, C, you know, wherever we want to go, let's work backwards and put some practical steps in there. So it's almost tying the vision and the why to the practical steps of how you're going to get there. And I think that's how you kind of get people across the line.
I love that. Thank you both for sharing your wisdom, your experience, and your knowledge with all of us here. Sarah, it's a pleasure hosting you and sharing your experience with Compassion Australia. If anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to our email at nonprofits@asana.com. And everyone who's registered will be able to access the slide deck, which we'll make available, as well as all of the links, so that you won't miss out on anything if we moved a little too quickly for you. With that, thank you.
Great, thank you, Michael. Thank you, Meenal. Thank you very much, Sarah, and thank you everybody for joining us today. And like Michael said, I'll be sending out the recordings towards the end of the day. And if everybody could just take a couple of seconds to fill in the survey, that would be great. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a great day.